fans, Mike Singer and Tim Hyde here with this week's Notre Dame football show on YouTube. Pod Like a Champion for those listening via audio only. We're live to you on a Tuesday night. I'm out of town tomorrow, buying a condo, so we're actually closing tomorrow.
Nice.
Little investment property. So yeah, I'm out of town tomorrow, but glad that we could go live tonight. Tim's playing Captain Dad.
Oh yeah,
running around today. So I was just joking before we started recording. I think 2 minutes ago he was in downtown Boston, and now he's, somehow flew home to. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, doing good. Ready to talk some ball. Lovely Tuesday. Last week felt like we hadn't talked in a month, and it only been a week. This time, I swear we just talked 2 days ago. So this is like a super fast week. I loved Goolsby's interview. I watched today actually. I got a chance to watch that. That was awesome to hear him and Coach Madison talk. So I know we'll get into that. And yeah, dad life, man. It's summer. I got kids doing 27 camps. My wife signs them up for everything on earth. And I was like, as long as I get an hour to talk to all these Notre Dame fans, I'm happy as a clam. So let's enjoy some chit chats tonight.
Yeah, I do want to plug a couple things before we move on. Of course, I'm going to go full screen of Singer here. The Notre Dame football preview. You got this beautiful man, Sam Hartman, on the front of it. So sorry for podcast audience. You'll just have to believe me. So yeah, it's bluegoldonline.com. And I guess you can order a single issue right here. Can you buy it right here? Okay, so what you'll have to do is go to the top here, 2023 football preview, and there you go. So pick it up. You can get a digital copy for $10 right now, or this bad boy, $18.95. And there is 160 pages. I mean, the pages are glossy, right? I mean, this is not, something that if you blow on it, it's gonna rip. Like, this is the good stuff. Mike Singer's even got a couple. It smells good too, Tim. Mike Singer's got a couple articles in here. Look at this beautiful spread here. I don't know how well you guys can see it. You got Jim Flanagan, James Flanagan, the picture of a Bryant Young, Bryce Young, Jerome Bettis is, I mean, it's fantastic. So, I wrote a couple articles in there. The other guys do a lot more for the football preview than I do, but so bluegoldonline.com, please check it out. Does it smell like Under Armour? Mr. 2.0 says. That's a good one. That's a good one. My CJ Carr says preview is on my desk.
Love it.
So sweet. I appreciate you purchasing. So
speaking of that, I was like just reading the last couple of nights. I just went back and because Goolsby was doing with Madison, I went back and read a bunch of old articles with Willingham, Davies last year when Willingham. So been reading a lot of articles from that 2001, early 02 period. So it's good. I'm telling you guys, for the Notre Dame history guys, it's good to have, and you go back someday and refresh your memory. Because I know guys have been talking about it on the message board. I was like, I got to go back and bust out the blue and golds. And
how many blue and gold magazines do you have in your house?
I told you, Mike, I have every one since when I was in the Marines. I was overseas in 92 in beautiful downtown South Korea. And that was my first one. Kid you not. It was freezing. They do mail call, and there was my first one in that blue and gold envelope that's been around. It's probably 6 billion of them in the warehouse. The same ones from back then. I have them all since 92.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 92.
And your wife hasn't thrown them out?
No.
That's the most amazing thing about that. Because that spring cleaning, happens and she didn't throw it out. CJ Carr, I mean, it's funny because we're talking about CJ Carr later in the show. It says Mike sprayed his cologne on a page. Nice scratch and sniff bonus. That's hysterical. There's no way this is CJ's dad, Jason Carr, right? There's probably no way. But I feel like I should throw it out there. J Carr, I mean, maybe. Who knows? If it is you, Jason, what's going on? But I imagine it's not. So yeah, comment. I did tweet and post on the message board that I might have a surprise.
Okay.
So why don't you tell people what the surprise is?
I have no idea.
That's right. Tim,
I'll be honest. I have no idea. I've been so busy. I don't think you even texted me.
no, I don't want it to. No,
No clue.
that's a surprise for you too.
Good. I like it.
It'll be interesting. I'll say that. We'll see if it happens. That's why I'm not just saying it because I'm not 100% sure it's going to happen. But
Whoever it is, yeah, call in.
what do you
Call.
mean? Who said
Or
it was
video in. I'm sorry, Mike.
who said it was a person? I might have some new. Who knows? Who
There we
knows?
go. There we go. A little AI. Is that what it is? A hologram of somebody?
J Carr says I must keep my ambiguity. All right. Keep your secrets.
All right, good to go.
All right, we've got a few topics before we're going to get to some CJ Carr talk. But first, let's hear from our friends over at My Perfect Franchise. How about that, folks? Or if you are a displaced corporate executive, or if you're just wanting to put your career in your own hands, or maybe you're an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify, well, Andy Ludicky can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, Andy helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy. Put your life and career in your own hands. All the information you can find is at myperfectfranchise.net. Number to call 404-973-9901. Again, 404-973-9901. Best of all, Andy's services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. J. Carr, people forget, Mike. I met you at the Peyton Bill game. Okay, I remember you then. Yeah, you are not Jason Carr. That is not Jason Carr. There you go.
Is that the one that Freeman was at? You saw him on the sideline?
I did.
Was that a Freeman game? Okay.
Yeah, Freeman and
that.
Leary were there. Yeah, it was a good time. Peyton Bowen. Someone posted on the board. I guess it was going around on the message boards. Oh, Peyton Bowen's coming or is leaving Oklahoma.
What was that? I didn't even click. I'd be honest.
That died out pretty quick.
I guess. Click on something.
I don't know where these things start, man.
Oh God. I was like, I'm not even touching that thing.
I said I would begrudgingly look into it, and I half looked into it, and there's nothing really there. So I no thanks. All right, first up on the topic list, Tim. This was something that you were interested in. Was this Phil Steele top 40 list? What's this about? Because you had said like there's some weight to this.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Horka, I think, just wrote about it in a recent article as well, talking about I believe it was Tyler about the percentage of Steele. Steele's a magazine guy. He's been around for a while. He's one of the few guys that still does a national magazine. They've all died out, which stinks. I have another thing. I have 40 sporting newses from over the years. So it stinks that they don't do those. Those are just great to lay on the couch, chill on the weekend, read those things. But with Phil Steele, I want to say the last 10, 12 years, let
me read this blurb. I have Horka's article pulled up. And first, Clemson's number 2. I'll read you guys the top 20 here in a second.
Yeah.
But this is what Horka writes. Steele's prediction of the top 10. It's his prediction. It's not his own top 10. He's predicting what the AP top 25 poll will look like. And this is a blurb from Horka's article. You can find it at blueandgold.com. Steele has named all 10 of the preseason top 10 teams in 8 of the last 14 years. He's put out his projection.
It's crazy.
That's nutty.
Yes.
In that span, he has hit on 134 of the top. Excuse me. He has hit on 134 of the 140 top 10 teams. Last year, Steele predicted Oregon to be number 10. The pollsters ultimately put Baylor in that slot. The Ducks came in at 11. I mean, so let me read the top 20 for podcast audience.
Yeah, by the way, Notre Dame was in the preseason top 10 last year, so obviously he didn't hit on that one. So there we go.
Georgia, shocker.
Yeah.
Clemson, a little bit of a surprise. Michigan 3, above Alabama at 4. Ohio State 5. Penn State 6. USC 7. So your future Big Ten.
Yeah, look at that. Huh?
Yeah, 4 schools in the top 7 is crazy. Florida State 8. Man, does that seem high? 9 LSU. Brian Kelly's team right above Notre Dame at number 10. You got Texas at 11, A&M at 12, Wisconsin 13, Washington 14, Oregon 15, and then Utah, Iowa, Oregon State, go Beavs, Tennessee, Oklahoma to round out the top 20. Oklahoma is at 20. The side note on Oklahoma, you guys have heard me say this before, it's been a while, but there's just some schools that always get ranked so high, and I'm so tired of the hype. North Carolina and Iowa State are I mean, every year it seems like those are the, oh man, watch out for North Carolina and Iowa State. And they just never, they're always like a 4-loss team. And then Oklahoma's always, oh, this is Oklahoma's year to win that. And they just don't. They just don't. I know
we went over this a year ago, and my pick was, being a West Coast guy, is Arizona State. I can't tell you
how'd that go.
How many times Arizona State's been in, the top 10 hype, the top 20, oh my God. And they'll go 5-7. So even this year, they got the new hot young coach, the QB. The QBs, that's Rashada, I believe, right?
There's a kid there. He was an 8-2 starter last year.
Drew Pine beat the mighty Clemson, by the way, when they were ranked number 4.
I think Pine had 6 completions that game or something like that.
They all count, baby. It's all a win. It's all a win. But mine's Arizona State. But going back to this article, it was those numbers. It's that percentage of how Phil Steele hits. And
yeah, it's crazy.
He's been on a bunch of podcasts lately. I've been just Googling him, trying to find him, because he's been talking about each and every team, going to all their fan podcasts and that. So breaking it down, he's a fun guy to listen to, big data guy, which is interesting. And I just like, because he's got Notre Dame top 10. So to me, when I see Notre Dame at 10, that's okay. He's saying they're going to go 10-2. That's how I look at a top 10 Notre Dame team is going to be 10-2. They're not going to be 9-3. If they're 9-3, they're down at 18-20. It's just the way people are going to perceive with them. So 10-2, Notre Dame is number 10. If they're 11-1, they're a top 5 football program. So with 10-2, he's predicting them. So that means they're going to beat somebody. They're going to beat one of those big 3 football games, right? Or is it 2-1 and they lose to Louisville or Duke, all these ACC teams, which I'm not. I don't think Notre Dame's going to lose to any of those guys. So that's just my humble opinion with the team that Indy has this year. So I found that fascinating. And obviously with the Clemson thing, he's just sticking the Dabo. Everyone acts like Clemson's down, and the guy's won 21 football games the last 2 years still. So he's getting into a little bit of that with them, and then he's really high on Alabama, and then with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. He was just on a Big Ten podcast I was listening to a couple days ago, and he's like, he just flipped a coin between those 3, because they all play each other in different venues. No one really has an advantage, according to him. And I'm with you real quick, Mike, on the Florida State, because Florida State opens with LSU. Then a few weeks later, they're at Clemson. So them being 8, man, I mean, they're going to have to split those and then basically run the table to be an 11-1 ACC division champ, whatever the ACC is doing this year. I don't even know. So that's very, very high, I thought, with Florida State. I'm with you. And then LSU with obviously Brian Kelly. This is low compared to a lot of the national polls. People are talking about them being a Final Four team. So, but we'll see. It's just fun to start finally looking at rankings, talking football. Notre Dame camp starts 26, 27, something like that. So
26th, I think. So yeah, just over 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, very exciting.
So next week we'll need to do like some kind of fall camp primer kind of deal, position battles. Let's do something like that next week.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of things on my mind. So yeah, definitely start getting into the football field.
All right, let me get to a couple comments before we move along. David's asking about Gerby Lambert. I literally I recorded with Darren Pritchett a video about Gerby Lambert, uploaded it, went and got a haircut, came back, fed the cats, and I'm on the show. So watch that video. That is what I'm trying to say without plugging.
I told you, I'm not clicking on anything between Lambert till.
Did you read the article this morning?
No, I told you I'm not clicking on it, Mike.
All right, well, Tim, I think I'm just going to pull the article up and read it to you. I mean, I've got you for an hour, so you're going to read this article, damn it.
I posted last night. I'm not jinxing it. I love Gerby Lambert. He's been one of my, him and and Asa have been my two must gets in this class. So I'm hanging loose. I'm hanging in the background, not jinxing anything, Mike. Aren't I the guy that said the Notre Dame D line was going to win the game in the Fiesta Bowl? So I got to lay back on a few predictions.
Wicked Bronco, what do you make of Breedell Richardson tweet about coming back to Notre Dame, even though he didn't make his top four? He's playing with us.
Yeah.
I didn't even see this, to be honest with you guys. Breedell Richardson, receiver out of Tampa, says Notre Dame fans will be back soon. So,
yeah, shoot him a text.
All right. Hey, Wicked Bronco, why don't you hang tight? Let me shoot a text out.
Shoot a text. I mean, I went on his On3 page and found a couple articles, and it sounds like it's LSU, Florida State. I guess he's focusing on. I could be wrong. I know LSU was on there, but supposedly he took some official visits, and they're not updated on his profile. So unless he didn't go on those. But yeah, I mean, Breedell was the shocker one when he came out with his final group in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
There.
Nah, yeah, but that was in May. You know, May is
okay.
It was less than 2 months ago, but yeah, in recruiting terms, that's forever.
Oh, it was Michigan. It was LSU and Michigan were the two he was focusing on from what recent articles that we're talking about.
It would be somewhat of a surprise. Like, I don't see it, but also if his options have kind of dried up, maybe if you're announcing a Final Four at the end of May, you're pretty close to committing. So maybe it hasn't. So yeah, I don't have an answer for you right now.
It'd be a heck of a third receiver, that's for sure, in this class.
Let me send out one more text just so my odds are better for getting an answer while we're live here.
I love it.
Hold on.
I like how someone said, hold on, yeah. Someone says, will Mitchell Evans be the next Michael Mayer? Interesting. Well, we're going to find out. He's going to be the main guy. Yeah.
What do you see my talking point the other day about Cooper Flanagan? I think he might be a surprise of this class.
Yeah, because I mean we've talked about this with Bauman's been injured more often than not. You still got Raridan, who's a freak athlete, but back-to-back ACL injuries. How fast do you run him back? And then it's Stays and Evans. When you look at it, so it's Flanagan obviously is coming from De La Salle, hard-nosed football program, big time. Coaching goes on up there, so he'll come in just like every other De La Salle guy that's come to Notre Dame, ready to roll on day one. So I like that prediction because he's a guy who could probably be a goal line blocker, a guy who gets in there on rundowns. Do they do some 12 personnel if some of the wide receivers don't pan out? So yeah, it's definitely a nice prediction.
All right, I already got a text back on Breedell. I'll in Wicked Bronco, I'll write about this in Lucky Charms tonight as well. I'll just make a note. Breedell.
I'll click that article as long as Lambert's not in there, Mike. I will click that one.
Yeah, well, Lambert's in there. Lambert, I already wrote half of Lucky Charms today, and Lambert's the first half. So
sounds good.
Tim, you're killing me.
I know.
But yeah, there's something to it, but it's not like a full court press just yet, if that makes sense. Wicked Bronco Productions drops $20 super chat. Appreciate that, my friend. He says, did my own interview with Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, I believe it's a brother of Jeremiah Owusu-Koroma. Okay. And my favorite quote was, location doesn't mean anything in my recruitment. Location and weather doesn't matter if you have that dog in you. I love that as well. Do you think he ends up at Notre Dame? Jeez, Wicked Bronco Productions is dropping. Hey, man, he's dropping.
Yeah, the prediction on
this. I appreciate you, my friend. Nathaniel also said volunteer without me asking. NIL money doesn't matter to me either. I've seen what Notre Dame can do firsthand for my brother JOK, of course. Mm-hmm. And I know I can do the same thing. Seems like a heavy Notre Dame kid need more. I don't know exactly what the end of your sentence was here, but just you can just drop another comment. You don't need to do another super chat, dude. Appreciate all the support, but do I think he ends up at Notre Dame? He still hasn't been to campus yet.
Yep.
So that's the big one. He just transferred to IMG. that's not been a super friendly place for Notre Dame. I don't think. I mean, who's the last player Notre Dame signed at IMG? They had Greg Crippen committed. Remember when they kind of
name a couple years ago? I mean, was
dropped
it?
him for the lack of a better term? Was that
Yeah,
good old mutual split?
Hainsey was a Pennsylvania kid, right? Yeah, Houston Griffith was Chicago. Was Tony Jones? Tony Jones was earlier than
Yeah,
that.
so you're talking 2019 prior, so it's been years.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, Griffith was what, 18? Was it 18?
18. Yeah, and then
It's been a chunk,
yeah.
right?
That's a while, especially with all the talent they always have. And Notre Dame's always recruiting guys there. So yeah, you're looking at several years ago. But good quotes. Wicked Bronco Productions, a aspiring journalist. So yeah, appreciate it. Always in there. And another one. I think that's $50 now. Wicked Bronco Productions says credit me for the Breaking Breedel stuff. Just kidding, man. Go get you a chicken quesadilla. Mail me, my guy. Hey, I appreciate it. I hope my wife's listening because this means that we get to go eat Taco Bell soon. Maybe tomorrow on my road trip. All right, really appreciate you guys with all the good comments, especially Wicked Bronco Productions with super chats. Yeah, just one more thing before we get to CJ Carr talk, Tim. The interview that we did, it was Friday, and it aired on Monday. The interview with Greg Madison, who recruited Mike Goolsby, our esteemed colleague and former Irish captain linebacker. They talked it up, for a good half hour. Did you have any thoughts, reaction to anything that was said in that interview?
Oh, the best. I mean, my favorite part was the best football teams go to the playoffs, not the rankings. I love that out of Madison since everyone's always so obsessed. Even those guys, I just like the way he phrased that. But no, you know what? It's no, I mean it was really good. I really enjoyed his talk about at least during him. I mean, once again, this is coming from him, his time, his experience, the coaches hit. He's been around. People also got to remember. Greg Madison at Notre Dame was a part of 3 top 5 classes. Willingham's in 03, and then he had Davies in 98, 99 were back-to-back top 5 classes. So he's a part of some groups that grinded out there on those recruiting trails to go get some dudes, and that's what he was talking about. And I really liked how he got into the coordinator. There's a point where the coordinator's got to go get a guy and sell his vision, his philosophy for what he sees in that guy. So I really enjoyed that. I like the talks about just, sometimes, because this is what, Goolsby and I and you, when we talked last time we all got together, was who is Notre Dame's go-to guy? Do they have a go-to guy on that staff? And I liked how Madison was like more often than not, at least once again in his experience, it's you'll know early with some of these guys. And if you're not hitting it off early, you're going to struggle. So it doesn't matter sometimes if it is a go-to guy on the staff. So I found that interesting. And I loved, talking about the coordinator talk where he was the main guy for Tim Tebow. I found that fascinating, where there was a point in the recruitment and he was like, I'm done. You guys need to go take care of him. You're the offensive guys. I'm out of this recruitment. He's all yours. And he backed up. And I really enjoyed that part of the conversation.
Yeah, it was definitely good. And again, you guys can check it out on our Blue and Gold YouTube page. Would definitely recommend you guys doing that. All right, we're going to get into some CJ Carr rankings talk. I mean, it's just very, very exciting stuff, rankings. Tim, we love talking recruiting rankings. It's our favorite thing to do.
Seriously, it is wild, and it is like going. It's crazy. It's what it is. It's
when it gets nasty. It's like I got people taking shots at me. Like I'm like, bro, you have as much to do with CJ Carr getting ranked where he is than I do. Like what? I mean, maybe a little bit more. I will shoot footage and send it to On3 people to be like, hey, here's. But other than that, but
it's wild. Just how it's so obsessed with just one guy, like CJ Carr is 6 Joe Montana's coming. I mean, that's just to be goofy there, but it is wild.
I haven't seen this. The passion. I mean, and this is I've 21, 2, 3, This is my 5th recruiting class covering Notre Dame. I've never seen this passionate about a player. So we'll talk about that, but we're going to hear from our friends real quick before we dive into it over at Rogue Shop. It's the husband and wife outfit, as Mr. Rogue and his wife Shar are craft cannabis farmers who specialize in small batch, sustainable plant medicine, a true holistic type of small business. They farm and grow everything themselves and do everything by hand. Tim, I know we sent you these earrings. You gotta wear them on our show next week. At least I think those are earrings. Yeah, they farm and grow everything themselves. Do everything by hand, and their website to visit is rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com. They sell everything from CBD, THC, edibles, tinctures, smokables, bath salts, pain creams, topicals, vapes, candles, soaps, and more. Check out their website, rogueshop.com. They have a 24/7 chat function where customers can ask Mr. Rogan Shar any questions that they have. Check them out at their website, and if you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, anxiety, stress issues, that is the place to go check out and learn more about. If you use that promo code blue and gold, all in one word, you will get 10% off your order. So please do check that out. All right, Tim. Your recruiting rankings. So I was looking at this. There are several Notre Dame commits who On3 ranks higher than the industry. And it's like some are lower and then some are right in the middle. But the ones that On3 has ranked higher, I think are pretty interesting. Cam Williams, I mean, it's not a crazy difference, but I mean, he's the 30. And we're just going to look at national rankings for this because like some websites will list a player as a linebacker and On3 has it as an edge, or, you know, On3 has it as an interior lineman, they have it as a tackle, or vice versa, or whatever. So we're just going to look at national rankings for this. On3 with Cam Williams, 35 overall. The other three at 52, 51, 49. Obviously, Carr is an outlier in the bad direction. Tay Johnson is right around ESPN, so not a whole lot of an outlier. Really, the outlier there is Rivals having him as the top 60 overall player. And here's a big one. Kedron Young, the number 92 overall player, 24/7 as a 4-star outside the top their national rankings. And then ESPN and Rivals, 212, 217. Logan Thomas, I think this is one of those where maybe another website doesn't list it differently, but his national ranking is highest on 3, 168. The others are 186 twice and then 231. Micah Gilbert's is pretty standard. Aeneas Williams on 3 has slightly higher, than a couple, it looks like. But our Rivals and Outlier rank them. Hold on, Tim. Just a couple more to get to. Styles Press. These three are the big ones here. Yeah. Before we talk CJ Carr. Styles Prescott on 3 is ranked number 179 nationally. I think this is 24/7 as a 3-star, Rivals 3-star, ESPN 4-star outside of national rankings. That's a huge disparity. Bryce Young, same. 2 of them 3 stars, 1 4-star outside the rankings. On 3, 194. Anthony Knapp, look at this, Tim. 3-star, 3-star, 3-star. On 3, 184 nationally. So it's just like I had a guy tweet me yesterday and was just like, I'm not listening to Mike Singer anymore unless he leaves On 3, because when guys commit to Notre Dame, they drop in rankings. I'm like, who is saying this? Is it some other Notre Dame YouTube channel? Is it just people on Twitter? Like, who is saying this? It's so wrong. You can't just look at the CJ Carr ranking and be like, oh, On 3 hates Notre Dame. Did you guys just go through that exercise with me? The rest are kind of that 3-star, low 4-star. There's not really national rankings to compare. No. But we just went through some of these like 4-star guys, and six of them where On 3 is ranked the highest. That's a good bit. So On 3 needs to calm down with their Notre Dame positive bias, if you ask me.
Yeah. But it's all about the one guy. I
get that. It's the quarterback.
Yeah, it's the quarterback. And it's getting to a point where it's almost like it is. It's almost like it's comical. We're like, no, and who's to say that 247? Because someone wrote in the chat, well, they have him here Well, who's to say that's right? Correct. Just because they have them ranked higher, it means they're correct. That this is what cracks me up sometimes. And then I sent you a text last night, Mike. The Florida, there's the Florida Gator fans are losing their mind.
They're outraged.
What's that?
They're outraged.
They're outraged. 7 out of their top 8 recruits. This Florida Gators, who are ranked like 3rd or 4th in the country right now.
They're so high. Yeah.
7 of their top 8, their guys dropped in the On3 rankings. And Florida fans are just going crazy on Twitter. So it's not just Notre Dame. It's all around. I even found some Alabama people going nuts. Like, how's my guy not in the top 8?
All right. I have this article saved on my phone. I don't know why. I've had it saved for a year. This is a Miami website. How much longer are we going to put up with On3's bias for? I mean, it's literally everyone. And I think the big reason for this is because there are disparities. I was listening to Charles Power. He did an interview with a Florida YouTube channel. And he said, I don't care what other websites rank. And I'm like, good for you, man. And people are talking about like the Kingston Viliamuasa ranking.
Yeah, that is.
I don't understand it at all.
I
don't. I think the Carr ranking's wrong.
This is
the Kingston one's crazier.
Yeah, this is crazier to me because obviously I'm a SoCal guy. I'm biased as could be. He's the best linebacker in the best high school league, the best high school program. It's 4-year starter, on and on and on and on, and he's not even top 300. That's maddening. Where real quick, Mike, I just went over the top 100 in the On3. It's like Paul Menke is in the top like 70. So Paul Menke is going to Duke. Is a better football player than Asa.
All right. Well, where they're going doesn't matter because Menke could have ended up at Notre Dame and Kingston might too. So where they're going doesn't matter.
True, but I just found that. But there are a handful, and one of the biggies was Chris Cole, who was like ranked 900 a few months ago, and now he's in the top 50. So there's a handful I found interesting when looking at it. But you're right, it's an outlier, and when I talk to people. And they talk about rankings. I'm like, dude, it's 1 of 4. All these people have their own ideas, their own film eval. This guy may have not even played football, and he's ranking football players, let's say, and that happens. I mean, these aren't a bunch of ex-coaches and college football players that are doing rankings now. So that's just my little opinion on some of these.
Yeah, in terms of pedigree, I know Charles. Like my understanding is Barton Simmons left 24/7 for Vanderbilt,
Randy.
And then Charles Power ran 24/7 scouting before coming to On3. So I mean, if you're like, oh, 24/7 is better. I mean, Charles literally did 24/7's rankings for a few years. So I mean, there's that.
Exactly. So the odds of him taking Barton, who's obviously now at the SEC school helping Clark Lee recruit, and so the odds of Charles Power using his formulas are probably pretty high. So if everyone loved him at 247, I mean, I'm sure he tweaked a few things because it's his job. It's his little outlier that he wants to do. But he learned from a guy who's now a recruiting coordinator in the SEC. So probably using
Cody Belair is Charles Power's right-hand man. And, he was I think his role is director of high school scouting. I think he did it at LSU, Texas Tech. I mean, I've said this before, like the services I just broke one of my pet peeves called them. We're not, I don't think we're a recruiting service. Who are we serving? I mean, fans. I mean, we're a media website, but the ones that, your scouts, you guys are doing the rankings are also reporters. That's the word. You can't do that because if Justin Scott is texting me back and doing all these interviews with me, I might rank him a little bit higher. But what if he just doesn't ever talk to me and I let my bias get in the way and rank him lower? Like some of these websites do that. Like I'm not all right. Maybe I shouldn't say they're doing that because I'm not going to say that. But I mean, I think though it's very much possible. So like Charles and I don't know if Charles Power's talking to CJ Carr. I don't think he ever does. So he can be removed. Like there's no relationship part about it. Strictly the scouting. And again, folks, hey Tim, do you think he should be the number 14 quarterback in the country? Yes or no? No. Do I? Heck no. I think he's like in that 5 to 7 to 8 range, somewhere in there. But I think that in this country, we should be able to have real discussions and conversations about this instead of just attacking people in threats on Twitter. Like, it's kind of disheartening about just people like that. We get so offended. The only person that should really get upset about this is CJ. And I not gonna lie to him, I kind of like it. I kind of hope he gets that chip on his shoulder. And it's like, I want to prove those idiots wrong. Like, I kind of hope he does that, you know?
Well, that's why I started going back just the last couple of days as well, and I'm going in the Kenny Minchie camp on this. It's like, why in the world was he the 183rd ranked player? Correct? Why was he ranked so low? Here's a guy that went to the Elite 11. Here's a guy that won the Pro Day over there. He's the one that won, all the accuracy challenges last year, and he didn't get no Elite 11 bump because he was a Pitt quarterback. Is that what it was? So I went back and rewatched Minchie's film, and I'm just like, oh my God, everyone's forgetting about this guy. This guy's one heck of a quarterback who was totally under valued, I felt, when you look at him last year. So at the bottom, at the end of the day, my gosh, Notre Dame's getting two back-to-back outstanding quarterbacks that are coming here to battle, and hopefully one of them showcases enough talent to be the guy so Freeman doesn't have to go out and get another transfer. So it is it's a wild situation, but two really good quarterbacks.
All right, that surprise might be happening soon. I don't know, folks. This is live television. This is how things go. All right, you bring up the Minchie thing. It's interesting.
Yeah, I love Minchie. His film is elite.
So for folks watching on YouTube, I did my best to kind of put a side-by-side here. The On3 ranking for Minchie, 184 national, 17 quarterback, which ESPN there says 5, but again, they have dual threat and pro style. Yeah. That's the stupidest thing. I mean, this isn't 2006. Like, come on, people. Like, they're all quarterbacks. They all, for the most part, need to be able to move. So you just do quarterback. But 184, 17, and then the others are pretty comparable. On3's right in the middle there. And then the On3 ranking for Carr is 192 and 14, so a little bit higher for CJ in the quarterback ranking. And then I'm not a huge fan of national rankings. I mean, you're comparing a guard to a quarterback national rankings. It's really not that interesting. But I think with Minchie, it's like, oh, you flipped him from Pitt. He's not ranked super, super high by any of these rankings websites. So, there's not outrage from that. But with Carr, because he was so hyped early and he does have such high rankings, there's much more outrage. That's kind of my thoughts on that, Tim. What do you think?
No, I know. I'm sorry. I'm reading the comments, and some
don't
guys
read the comments. Never read the comments.
I know the guy says On3 is never correct. Well, then this guy's not going to like Jeremiah Love and Kedron Young, who are top 100 according to On3. So that means they will be bust. So I'm sure this guy was not happy who was when Jeremiah Love committed then. So I guess that's going to be bad since they're constantly wrong. But I don't know. It's this whole ranking thing and the ratings things is fascinating. So yeah, I mean, Carr's a national top 50. I mean, what's his composite there in the 40s or whatever? So that's going back to Minchie, who's in the 180s or whatever. Sometimes you watch film and two guys look the same at times.
All right. So someone told me, they were like, Mike, why don't you get Charles Power on the show? And I was like, what can Charles say about CJ Carr that he hasn't already said? I mean, I interviewed him every single day. I felt so bad every single night being like, Charles, you need to send me a quote on CJ Carr, man, every single day. I've so many times. So, but I figure I'll shoot the guy a text and just say, hey, Charles, like, you want to pop on our show and just get roasted by Notre Dame fans? So
exactly.
Charles, hey, man, I know, Charles, that On3 is only 2 years old, but this guy says On3 has been wrong for the last 5 years. I don't even know if that's possible. Charles, you doing okay, man? I know rankings weeks are tough on me because of all the crap that I have to deal with from your rankings. They have to be tough on you too?
Yeah, well, I mean,
right? Yeah, I mean, you have emotions,
like,
feelings.
Well, I think this one's interesting because the interest we've seen in this one, which is the July like off-season ranking, which is before the senior year, which for us is, I think it's like so important to stress that the most important evaluation points have yet to occur in these rankings. We're like 6 months out from our final rankings, but the interest in this is unlike any July ranking that I've ever been involved with, and that dates back to like working at 24/7 Sports. And I think a lot of that's just because like just the traction On3 has. We have like a really big following on social media. We're also the first ones to put this out. And I think maybe most importantly, there's so many more of these prospects are committed now. So I think it's just kind of the interest is kind of blown up on it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been talking about rankings all day. So I figured why not a little more?
All right, Tim, I'll let you come up with some questions. Ask Charles. I have a few, and I'm really just kind of putting Charles on the spot with a lot of these. I'm going to have to mention that. So Charles, I probably see you, probably bump into each other in person, 3-4 times a year or so. And I get on the phone with you every once in a while.
Yeah.
I need you to answer this completely honestly. When we talk about CJ Carr, what do I tell you?
Make CJ Carr the number 1 player in the country.
There you go. I mean, folks, if you're saying Mike Singer's not going to bat for CJ Carr, I mean, you're crazy. I mean, people are like, Mike, when are you going to speak out against Charles Power? They're like, what do you want me to say? Like, I think he should be ranked higher. I say it all the time. So, I mean, catching the strays. All right. More rapid fire questions. Do you hate CJ Carr? Let's just lay it out there. Do you hate, I don't know if, he beat you up at something or, do you hate the kid?
Yeah, it's funny. I think doing this, I think you eventually get accused of disliking every school and all their commits. So, but I mean, it's one of those deals where like, I love the job so much as it all comes to the territory. And I just like watching football and seeing all these guys. And it's one of those deals where I think, the thing that I root for the most, I root for our rankings to be accurate, but I also root for these guys to make it easy. Like I root for them to really make it easy on us, to leave no doubt. I said earlier today, like a guy like Bryce Young, that was an easy ranking. Like he was a guy nominated every setting. Like, it was not hard, even though he's 5'10". The guy's like a physical outlier. It was not hard. And like, there's no like real set way of doing this. Like there is, I think what makes it fun to talk about and what makes it debatable and what makes it the fact like AI couldn't rank players is like there's a science to this, but there's also an art to it. Like as we all know, like you have to like kind of be able to discern the film and stuff like that. And it's highly subjective, but we just try to do it as transparently as fairly as possible. So but yeah, like I heard what y'all were saying kind of before I came on. I think if you were to put Kenny Minchie in this quarterback class, this cycle, which I think this 2024 cycle is really like lacks the depth that we saw from 2023 at the same stage. I think if you were to put Kenny Minchie in this cycle, he's a guy who would probably be knocking as like a top 100 type of prospect.
Really?
Like with him, the biggest thing with Kenny Minchie, like we ranked Kenny Minchie as a 4-star when he was committed to Pitt. And like, I think the biggest thing with him, I think he would have had more potential to rise had he played more of a senior year. I think he played 4 games, or had we gotten to see him in an all-star setting again, coming out of the senior year. But it would not like I would probably put him as the favorite in the clubhouse to be like the quarterback of the future at Notre Dame. It's in my opinion. Like I think I'm like really bullish on him. I think he showed the positive signs. I think he would have liked a little bit higher, like a little bit larger sample size. But I really am a fan of his, and I think you might look back on his ranking and say he's a guy who should have been higher. So I don't know. I just wanted to add that caveat where I'm pretty high on Minchie. Yeah,
and someone tweeted me yesterday. I don't know if you heard this part of the show, or someone's like, I'm not listening to Mike Singer anymore because, On3 ranks all Notre Dame commits lower after they commit to the Irish. And I was like, dude, we just went through an exercise where you have several, you and Cody Beller have several Notre Dame commits ranked much higher than the industry commanders, much lower. When I want to get to that in a moment. Another rapid fire question: is there any fan base that doesn't hate you? Like,
There's
like-
some that probably hate me less. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things where I think at this point, I understand when we're different on prospects. Like I understand why fans would want to know. Like I mean, if I was a fan of a school, like I would want an explanation as well. So I actually in a weird way enjoy explaining all of this, and it's one of those things where I cannot stress enough. Like we're really fluid, and if we see something that really changes our opinion or changes our long-term projection on these guys, which is ultimately an NFL draft projection, we're gonna effort to make that change. So I think and there's dozens of prospects here that happens on. The thing is, there's using CJ Carr as an example, he's extremely high profile prospect, given that he's quarterback committed to Notre Dame. He's ranked highly elsewhere. He's the grandson of Lloyd Carr. I mean, he's just been a big name for several years. So, Jaden Davis at Michigan is very similar. He and CJ Carr are ranked virtually back to back. And another who has been on the radar since he's in ninth grade, had a ton of offers, big name, high profile recruit, ranked by some as the number one prospect in the country as a ninth grader. So, some of this is early rankings are tough, man. They're super tough. I don't have, I have a lot of sympathy and understanding for college coaches who have to make these evaluations when these quarterbacks are in 10th grade. They're forming their boards and it's so accelerated and it's a rat race to try to get your quarterback. Whereas for us, we had the luxury of sitting back, watching these guys as seniors, seeing them in national all-star games and really drilling down on how good we think they could be, how high of a draft pick they think they could be. And I think that advantage that's why you see that kind of timeline, the developmental timeline is why you see guys like Patrick Mahomes, a Justin Herbert. I mean, even Joe Burrow was a low 4-star. Why you see a lot of these guys outplay their recruiting rankings and maybe their recruiting capital or kind of whatever you would assign to them in terms of how heavily they were recruited. You see you see those guys pop, and a lot of it is because what they showed as a senior. Riley Leonard, the quarterback for Duke, who is being mocked as a first rounder. Now he's kind of considered, I think, by most I think he's probably the third quarterback after Caleb Williams and Drake May in this draft, or at least going into the fall. And he's a guy who some thought was a tight end recruit going into his senior year. And I remember going back and watching his senior stuff and kind of just throwing a 4-star rating on him. And he's might be a first rounder. And he I don't think he had a ton of Power 5 offers, ended up at Duke. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a phenomenon, I think, in college football recruiting where the recruitment doesn't necessarily dovetail with overall development. So that's why we really focus on the senior year. And you'll have guys like a CJ Carr, the light might come on for CJ Carr and he might dominate. And if he does, he's going up. We'll have no hesitation in him going up. So that's kind of, I guess, my spiel on there's a lot more meat on the bone left to go, even though a lot of these guys recruitment, they're in the barn for their schools.
Yeah. So this was, I teased a surprise just because Charles told me he's probably going to come on and I was very happy that he did. Okay. I'm going to pop on some film for YouTube audience. This is actually the Elite 11. I got some of it from some folks who were there from On3 that sent it to me, but yeah, just the ranking of CJ as the 14th overall quarterback, that 91 rating. Just can you break down what you see on his film, and then you've seen him 2-3 times in person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that cluster of 91 quarterbacks, we kind of grouped all those guys together to kind of set the pecking order going into the senior year, just based off what we've seen so far. And a lot of it was off of seeing them in person at the Elite 11. That's really kind of, that order is really kind of how I would have it I think based out of the Elite 11, when you start with Ethan Grunkemeyer, the Penn State commit, and go down to Jake Merklinger, there's like a cluster in our rankings that are like, if you look at the 91 quarterback rankings, it's like from like 175 to 200 maybe. And I think Carr, I think with Carr, he is extremely accurate, probably the most polished quarterback in the cycle, relative to just, his technique, his accuracy, and all of that. So I think he's just very, very good, very accurate in confined like settings. When you kind of throw live defenses in, the performance probably, I think, could get better. We saw that at the Elite 11. He was extremely good in the pro day. Was good in drills. When things went to 7-on-7, not quite as good when you add DBs to the equation. I think he's a guy who just has a lot of polish, a lot of refinement, and really will benefit from playing. I think he just needs to relax, play. Like, quarterback is a performance craft, and I think that's something where, I think he's just going to benefit from playing high school football. That was one thing where, I think when it was being talked about that he might reclassify, I think if you look at the reclassification for quarterbacks, it just does not do you favors relative to development.
If I recall, he's only been playing football for 2 or 3 years. He's still actually pretty new to the game. Does that sound right?
So I think that was going to help him. And it would, that's not shocking that you say that, to be honest. But I think he's really technical. The polish, all of that is the drills are easy for him. I think the biggest thing is just going to be continuing to play, read defenses, read leverage, handle pressure. Those are all things that I would like to see him improve on. And I actually thought he showed some positive signs at the end of his junior year. If you look at some of those playoff games he played in, they might have, I think it was the one they lost in. I think they were playing maybe Bryce Underwood's team. He had some resiliency and impressive plays in that game. So I think it's possible he come out and play really well. And if he does, he's going to go up. I think that's the case with all those quarterbacks. It's one of those things where, it's a little hard to predict what's going to happen. You just, I think, have to take it in, and we watch it week to week. We'll have a update after the first month or so of the season. But the big one, I think, with the quarterbacks in their senior years is going to be probably the one around Thanksgiving, and especially the final one too.
Charles, there's so many things that keep popping up to my mind I want to talk to you about. Okay, so you see the rankings for CJ Carr at Rivals 247 ESPN. They're so high. How do you deal with that in your job? Because you don't rank kids based on offers, but if some kid randomly blows up, like a Chris Cole, for example, comes out of nowhere, just picks up all these offers, I'm sure it's natural for you to be like, I'm not going to rank him based on those offers, but I'm probably going to look closer at him, right? For an event, I'm going to maybe I should really take a close look at this kid. So how do you let some of these outside influences, factor into your rankings, especially with Carr in mind, that you did rank him. I mean, when your initial 24 rankings came out, I mean, he was one of the players that we knew the most about. So naturally he's going to rank higher than, the other kids who are just coming on the scene in the soft season maybe. So, but still, how do you let, you probably don't want all the hate on social media. You're a human being.
Yeah.
How do you kind of handle all that?
Yeah, I think it is one of the most difficult things about this is you are doing these rankings in real time while these guys are, starting when some of them are 15 up until they're 18. And it's it would be like doing an NFL mock draft for college freshmen is basically what it's like, and then updating your mock draft as they matriculate through college up until their junior or senior year. And think about the amount of changes that would happen with that. So I think that's, it's if you're doing this honestly, it's going to be really fluid. Otherwise, the odds of a prospect being a top 50 or just one who's kind of on the scene as a freshman and really staying there just based off of the numbers of prospects that we know. I'm starting on our 2026 ranking right now, and there's, probably 30, 40 quarterbacks with Power 5 offers already. It's really hard to say if those guys are going to be NFL draft picks, which is ultimately kind of what we judge our rankings against. That's how the metric that we judge. So it's a moving target. And I think Yeah, I mean, like with I think with ours is like we're I think less married to the early rankings, and anybody who kind of does this, I think as someone who like puts together the early rankings, like we'll put together the first 2026 watch list from any network. And like when I was, for instance, like when I was at 24/7, I did our first, we were actually ranked those guys numerically, like 1 through 100. And I did that one that had like LT Overton as the number 1 prospect in the country. Like Arch Manning was like number 4. I put that together. So as like the person who puts that together, you kind of inherently know, like, this is like a very far out projection with a extremely small group of the ultimate prospects that you're going to be looking at at the end. Like, for instance, like Chris Cole's a great example. Like we talked about this, Mike, I think like around like February. The amount of guys that emerge is like, I mean, we have dozens of commits every day this time of year. And a lot of them are guys who show up at these Power 5 camps and get offers off their measurables.
Tabron Benny Powell, for example, Notre Dame guy.
So like, and when you're ranking every FBS prospect, like you're like inherently playing catch up when it's every single guy. Like Notre Dame's board might be a couple hundred players. Like we're ranking thousands. So it's like, I mean, shoot, Notre Dame's board might be less than 100 given, you know, their like how they like the academic factor and all of that. So like they're probably more selective than your typical like Power 5 school that has, you know, might have 200 guys on their board, if that. Yeah, it's something you definitely juggle. And I would say like, you know, like relative to like CJ Carr, I mean, like Dante Moore was a guy we were lower on last year for a lot of the cycle. I mean, he wasn't as low as Carr is right now, but I mean, he's a guy who, like, what he showed at the All-American Bowl was so overwhelming. Like we kind of like it was not hard to make him a 5-star. So like we're certainly like willing, and like more than willing, I would say, to adjust if they give us reason. But you know, I think some of it is like this quarterback cycle in 2023 is not a great one. And
for 2023,
or sorry, 2024. Sorry. Yeah. 2023 was very deep, but like we're not going to like naturally inflate those guys until we have a better picture on who the real top ones are. And I think we'll get a lot better picture of that this fall.
Okay. All right. One more thing for me, and I'll throw it over to Tim. Now, when I remember talking to you, I want to say it was last fall when CJ kind of first took that tumble down in the rankings. You know, we have a decent relationship, so you kind of gave me a heads up that, hey, this is coming, brace yourself. And I remember you telling me that you watched maybe more of him than like any other quarterback because you really wanted to make sure, or maybe not make sure, that's not the right phrase, but you just wanted to have, like, before you did that, you wanted to have some conviction in that. So with that context in mind, like when you watch his game film, like the O-line, they look like tight ends. And sorry, if you're on the Saline offensive line, I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but like the O-line does look small. Yeah. Like, so and CJ seems to run for his life a good bit. So I'm curious. But I also know a lot of competition he plays isn't the greatest. Mm-hmm. You know, like, oh, you know, he's out by halftime for most of the game. So it has to be difficult to judge quarterbacks based on that because, like, yeah, your offensive line's not great, but then like the defenses might not be great either. Yeah. I mean, quarterback and evaluating has to be very difficult. I mean, heck, think about Jamarcus Russell, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield. Like, think about some of these quarterbacks who were taken, you know, first round and they were busts and they had college tape. I mean, you have, you know,
high school
Northeast stuff. Michigan. Yeah. So, all right, I just threw a lot at you. What are some of your thoughts on these things?
Yeah. I mean, I think if someone had the magic bullet for evaluating quarterbacks,
they'd make a lot of money.
They might be a billionaire, not a millionaire, right? Yeah. Like, so it's very difficult. I think you try to look at that. That's why I really kind of drill down like on the senior year. There's a lot of commonalities between top NFL draft picks, both kind of athletically, there's definitely some physical things that are in common, without kind of giving away the secret sauce. Like there's definitely some things I think that are commonalities physically, athletically, the athletic profile. There's a pretty strong like multi-sport background deal with those guys. A lot of basketball players. I think that has to do with just spatial awareness. And
We lost Charles there for a second.
yeah, I mean,
oh, yep, there you are, Charles. Go ahead, buddy.
yeah, I think you want quarterbacks who tend to improve as they get better, and also too, like I try to keep tabs on the way the NFL is moving. I think the NFL is probably moving towards more athletic quarterbacks. Like you look at a guy like Anthony Richardson. We definitely did not have him ranked high enough. He was a guy who, missed half his senior year, was not, like you said, was not at a great high school, but he was 6'4", 220 pounds and ran a 4.5 flat and had a 10.5-inch hand. Like there's just so many things about him that going back, you're just like, yeah, we probably should have moved him up, even though he wasn't a great high school player. There was just so much physical potential. So, and then you have a guy like Bryce Young, who is as good of a high school quarterback that I've seen since I've been doing this, and he's 5'10" and is the number one pick in the draft. So I think the thing with quarterbacks is they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but Anthony Richardson's a little bit of an outlier, but generally speaking, even guys like your Joe Burrow, Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, all those guys were like dominant high school players as seniors. Like Justin Herbert snapped his leg as a junior, didn't go to any camps, came out as a senior, and he's like 6'6", 230, slinging the ball around and running and extremely productive against like probably average at best competition. And the guy's a true freshman starter at Oregon. So it's really interesting, and it's something that I've like looked at a lot. I probably have studied quarterback and offensive line the most. I think our offensive line rankings have gotten a lot better in the industry over the last couple of years. And I guess if you want to, I don't know if you want to talk about this Notre Dame offensive lineman. I think like Prescott and Knapp maybe slid up a little bit, at least in the position rankings for us. But yeah, I mean, I find that the best thing with quarterbacks is you probably look at the traits, and a little bit of the performance, the play style as juniors, and you really drill down on the type of player that they're going to be as seniors. And like I just to touch on like how much like we watch these guys and kind of like the process. Like I mean, like I said earlier today, like I watched every play of Arch Manning's senior year last year, because I kind of had the inclination after watching the first couple games that he might not be the number one player in the country. So it's one of those deals where you just want to like really make sure that you're have a good feel for the player. I do think are scenarios where you can maybe watch too much, but I just try to have as good enough of a sample on those guys, or like enough reasoning, and make sure I just didn't like catch them on a bad day. Because like a lot of these guys will have bad games, but most of the good ones don't have. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, specifically on CJ with the offensive line stuff. Charles, any thoughts on that? Like
I think my biggest takeaway. I mean, I know he's under pressure a good bit. My biggest takeaway from just watching him in the context of his high school team, it's a lot of quick game. I think it's a lot of quick game, and I think the competition, like you mentioned, Mike, is like a pretty wide gap. It's like really tough team, overwhelmed, or he's out at halftime. So hopefully, it's a little like more even keeled this year. Like that's something I think that would maybe make it easier on us. That's the main thing. That's the main thing I always say. Like I root for these guys to make it easy.
Okay. And then we had one super chat that I wanted to get to before I throw it over to Tim. And Charles, I really appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm sure today's been a long day. Patrick dropped a 5 spot and said, what in your opinion limits CJ and not being a 5-star? Is it height? So I'll kind of add in my own question onto Patrick's as well. Like what just limits him, not just from a 5-star, but just in general, or maybe what you want to see during his senior season, that he could bump up.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just like performance in kind of these open, like live situations. I think what he shows in like the camp setting, or like a closed, like on air setting doesn't necessarily always transfer to when he's playing like live defenses. Like I think he shows like a little more arm strength and just conviction, confidence in those kind of on air camp drill settings. And like, I mean, you talk to college coaches who have had CJ Carr in camp and everybody gushes about like the pure arm talent. I just want to see that transfer over a little bit more to the live games. And I think some of it's like confidence. I think the more he plays, the more confident he's going to get. Like quarterback, like I said earlier, it's like performance craft. And I think it's something where like these like live in-game reps are really critical for just developing. And it's something where I think it's the case in college as well. If you look at college, like NFL draft picks who have success, I think there's like a pretty strong correlation between how early they played in college and how many like pass attempts and just like the experience they had. Like a lot of guys who are 3 and out, who are 1-year starters in the NFL, really bottom out by the time they're like off of their rookie deal. So it's similar to high school. Like, you know, I think like a guy like Trevor Lawrence had so many pass attempts in high school. And he, by the time he got to Clemson, and he also kept getting better. Like by the time he got to Clemson, he was ready to play in like a national championship game. So I think just with these quarterbacks, you want them to be as good as possible before they like matriculate to the next level. So that's why I'm like such a fan of these guys like playing their senior years, playing as much as possible. And we'll sort out the rankings like as that happens. Like I think it's really just important to stress like the most important stuff has not happened yet. Okay. But we do these rankings like for 2 years in advance of like the real stuff, which is coming up in a couple months.
It sounds like you're kind of like, can we just wait until senior year?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for the football season. And I think too, like, you know, I think it adds a little more like parity and variance on maybe where these guys go, because just the evaluation timeline is just so different from knowing, like, I think if you pushed recruiting back to what it used to be when they were kind of getting offers their senior year, especially like, 30 years ago, and taking official visits in January, it would be a deal where I think boards would look a little different, because we just would have such a better indication of really what you're getting.
Tim, you got anything for Charles?
Yeah, a couple hours. But number one, great, going back to the beginning, is great point on Kenny Minchey. I think people are forgetting because they're so consumed with CJ Carr how good Kenny Minchey is.
And Steve Angeli.
and Mike Steve Angeli. We never forget about Steve Angeli.
Wait. Charles, did I even drill you about Angeli's ranking too? I think.
Oh, and Angeli number 1 as well.
Okay. All right. Continue, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Angeli's a solid, where he was at. That's just my opinion. But with Mitch, I mean, Minchey's good, and people are forgetting. Yeah. I love how you said if he was in this group, he's probably battling for the top 5, which I truly believe he would as well. So that was a great point there. And it's CJ Carr, and reading the chat, you see Twitter, everyone just says 5-star, 5-star, but then compare CJ Carr to last year's 5 stars. He's sure doesn't look like those dudes to me, and that's just my humble opinion. I'm a born and raised Notre Dame guy. He doesn't look like the 5 guys you gave 5 stars to last year. So people need to relax. I chill out, if you want to use that term or whatever, because they're just consuming everything off of other people's rankings. And it's like, who's to say Rivals is different? And every week when Singer and I get on here, we talk rankings and this player, that player. For me, it's like, you're one of 4. And people need to realize that. You guys don't all get together in a room and hang out and say, hey, I'm going to rank this guy. Okay, I'm going to do this. No.
Yeah.
All 4 services, all 4 head of recruiting guys for all the big 4, let's just call them, even go Tom Lemming, who's been doing this forever, have different criteria. And it's like, what is wrong with someone having a different criteria? And that's, so you just talk about that for a second.
Yeah. And I think too, I'm like, I know how 24/7 judges theirs, because it's a system that we put in place when I was there. But I can't even really speak to A, the process that everyone uses, or B, like really what the driver is of their rankings. Like we try to be like pretty transparent and be like, look, like this is based off of NFL draft projection. So I think like if you're a 4-star in the On300, we're projecting you to be a draft pick. If you're probably 200 to 300, it's a day 3 comfortably type of draft pick, or that's just kind of like the odds we see you kind of shaking out at. Whereas if you're a 5-star, we think you have the greatest odds of being a first rounder. So I think that's important to stress. I'm kind of glad that the industry rankings aren't all the same. Like that would be pretty boring, and like we just would have like less to discuss. And if it was like a major groupthink situation, I like that it's different. I think football is such a developmental sport with so many different positions, and there's so many factors that go into evaluating football players, that it kind of lends itself to being a lot more volatile with rankings relative to like basketball. We're dealing with so many more players. It's like guys emerge really late. We don't get to see them all on the same AAU court like you do in basketball. We might get to see some of these guys in like national events, all-star games. Like that's really beneficial. But even like the Elite 11, the majority of starting NFL quarterbacks were not Elite 11 finalists. It's about, I think, a third of them were. Now it's probably a higher hit rate on that in recent years, but like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes all went to Elite 11 regionals and were passed up by the Elite 11 staff to be finalists. So like being Elite 11 finalists, like the majority of our top quarterback prospects are, but like every year we're going to have guys who were not Elite 11 finalists that were ranked pretty high. And I think those are guys that I think could surprise. So it's really interesting. I mean, something I think about a lot, and try to figure out, I guess, as we go, just to kind of like the exposure we have to different prospects. And is what we're seeing always, the most accurate, or kind of how it's going to pan out. And I think the amount that we see these guys too, like it really varies. Like some of these prospects I've seen, I've seen CJ Carr a ton. I've seen like DJ Lagway a ton. And there's some guys who are national prospects who haven't been to anything. So like the senior year gives us clarity. National All-Star games give us clarity. And I think it's all going to like become more clear and hopefully more accurate the further we go out. So yeah.
No, I was going to say, speaking of that, is what's funny is the guy you have, like, you're talking about guys popping on the scene is Miles O'Neill. Jim Rudloff, obviously he's gone from Marblehead to Hun, and I coached Jim Rudloff. We went to the state championship in 2009 together. So great guy. Yeah. He told me when this guy was a freshman, like, Tim, this guy is a freakazoid. He just needs to get noticed. And sure enough, he's starting to get noticed. So that's just an example of a quarterback coming on the scene late. And I texted Coach earlier, and he had a lot of good things to say about
and that's interesting you say that. Like, he's and hopefully we'll continue to get more clarity on Miles O'Neill as well. But like, based off the information I have and what I've seen, he has an argument as maybe having the highest upside, at least as a passer of guys in this cycle. He is 6'4.5", 220 with a 10 3/8 hand. He has a big arm. I watched like a couple of his games just to kind of see the type of player he is. Completed like 73% of his passes, accurate, like just a really strong decision maker. Like his process a lot. And I think I'm not typically a fan of quarterbacks like transferring. I think you can put yourself in bad situations when you do that. But I think he could benefit. I think he might benefit from the uptick in competition.
Yes.
And I think that's going to help him out. It rarely would I say that, but with him, I think that's going to help him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him at the Hun School this year. Like he's a guy who I'm going to be following every week.
two quickies for Mr. Singer is first question, and then the last one is just a quick little line one. But when you brought up competition, so let's go to competition, which is Mr. Kingston Asa out of the Trinity League, and how he's not in your top 300. So I'm biased. I'm born and raised. I was born in Long Beach. I'm a SoCal guy. Trinity League's the best football in America. I'm going to say it 1,000 times. It is. So when you're comparing competition to Chris Cole or CJ Carr in Michigan to Asa and what he goes through every single week, there's no cupcakes. Yeah. So I'm just curious on your evaluation of Kingston.
Yeah, I think Kingston is a really safe prospect. I think I agree with you. I think that is like, I would put Trinity League. There's probably a classification in Texas, a classification in Georgia. But on a week-to-week basis, that's probably the best high school football in the country. Now I think with him, he's big. He's not like overly long. I think he is like a pure inside linebacker. Can cover fairly well for his size. I'm not sure how he'll stack up athletically long term, or like what I see the capacity for improvement there. So and that's something we factor in a good bit at linebacker. I think linebacker is increasingly a measurables position relative to the NFL draft. The example I always use with that is, if you look at Georgia's national championship team 2 years ago, Quay Walker got drafted ahead of Nakobe Dean. If you had told a Georgia fan that would have happened, they would have said you're crazy. So that's something we factor in. He reminds me a little bit of Junior, a little bit. So I think in the right scheme, he could be effective. But I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how he stacks up like athletically and what we kind of deem as the upside. But definitely a really good player. One thing I think that is kind of interesting that kind of tying into a little bit what I was talking about with like those quarterbacks. If I went through and looked at like the high schools that NFL draft picks come from, like especially like top 100 picks, and it is very rare that you see high school teammates be draft picks, and it's particularly like not a pretty picture when you look at these power high schools, like your modern day St. John Bosco, IMG. Like I think there's the 2019, 2020 recruiting cycles for those three schools. There was 33 4-stars from those schools, and one of them got drafted. So it is pretty crazy that the recruiting rankings and college interests at those programs tend to be so far out of whack with how those players are drafted. And I think some of it's like probably exposure bias, some of it's specialization. There's a lot of factors at play, but I just think that's kind of an interesting storyline when you talk about like maybe the three most recruited high school programs in the country have a hit rate of NFL draft picks that is half of the average 3-star prospect. So I don't know. I don't think I've ever said that publicly, but that's something I think that's really interesting relative to the recruiting attention and just like media attention that those schools get.
That's a great point. I mean, using the term overexposure. So when we hear modern day and all, like St. John Bosco, they play, modern day. These guys travel. They'll go play anywhere.
Those are great. They're great teams. They're high school teams that would thump anybody they play. And there are guys that are draft picks from those schools. Like, Bryce Young played at Mater Dei. We have a lot of these guys ranked high. Like, we have so many blue chip prospects from them. But I'm just like looking at the numbers on the draft, and it is like pretty alarming how few like 4-star prospects, like the 5-stars we usually hit on, like our hit rate on 5-stars as the industry is very high. Those are guys that are like essentially like no brainers for the most part, hopefully. But the hit rate on 4-stars is really interesting when you kind of look at that. A lot of the 4-stars that hit are guys who are at high schools that might be a little off the beaten path, and they're ones who are so good that they're pulling college coaches to that school and just to see them, and they aren't like part of a super team, because we're seeing more and more of these high school super teams form. And I think I think enough of top prospects will be at these teams. Like Buford and George is a great example. I mean, Mike, that's kind of in your backyard. Like they have a ton of 5 stars. It's going to be interesting to see like what the hit rate is on those guys, kind of moving forward.
No,
But it's something that's interesting, and I think we as just media and guys who cover recruiting, it's an interesting thing to think about when the results really do not kind of match up with the amount of attention that we give them.
no, I love that. I like little research projects. Now you got me thinking to go back.
When I pulled the numbers on that, it caught my eye. So it's something I'm watching moving forward to see if it was an anomaly, those 2 recruiting cycles, or we just like super wrong, or is that something that's a trend?
No, I like that. It's interesting. And then real quick is, I know you have Thompson as the number 1 offensive tackle, tall, long, the young man going to South Carolina. And what's your thoughts on Gerby Lambert, who's been my number 1 must get for Notre Dame since he got offered? I just absolutely love him.
Hey, Charles, before you go, just to give you a heads up, I do like Notre Dame to land him, so just make sure you drop him down. Obviously,
okay.
I'm kidding, folks. Kidding.
Yeah, we've been high on Gerby Lambert for a long time. I think the first thing that caught my eye with him is just the combination of like length and movement skills. I mean, we ranked him high as a sophomore, and it was like kind of a far out projection. As far as I know, he's like hadn't been to any camps, so he's one that if he's at like a national event, how he looks at that is really going to determine where he ends up in the rankings. A guy who plays Northeast prospects are interesting to me to evaluate because it's just the season is a little wonky. They might not play as many games. There's maybe not as quite as much stuff to go through. So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing more from him. But yeah, man, like big right tackle, really like the way he moves. I think he has a lot of translatable skills. Probably like a little underdeveloped, but like you can see right there, like I went through going through the offensive tackles for this update, just circling back on junior film. And I liked what I saw from him. So I think with coaching and development, and Notre Dame obviously has a really strong track record there, especially on the offensive line. I think he's a guy who has a really high ceiling based off what we've seen so far. But I'm looking forward to seeing more from him as well. So we've always been high on him.
Would you put him, just to follow up on that, is where do you put him? Because you gave Jagasaw and Wagner 5 stars. Where's your comparison with those 2, the last couple classes?
Yeah, I think he's got a little more. I think he's based off what I've seen and know. I think he's probably got a little more like the stature, build, length is probably a little better than both of those guys. Jagasaw, I just was like I was just such a fan of Jagasaw's like movement skills and just the balance he played with. You could like kind of just see like that he was like he was an elite wrestler, but you could like see that in the way he played. We never got to see Jagasaw like play in person, but we kept him as a 5-star just because we had like some conviction off the film, and it was like also like not great competition either. But I still like just liked him a lot relative to that offensive tackle group. And Wagner, that was like a really weird like offensive line cycle. I think if you had put Wagner in 2023, he wouldn't have been a 5-star. Like a lot of years, maybe like a guy like that who's more developmental would probably be more like a top 50 type of prospect than a 5-star. So I think he probably benefited a little bit from being high in that offensive tackle group relative to that cycle. And last year's offensive line class, I thought was awesome. Like it was like one of the best offensive line classes that I've evaluated. Like all those guys had really strong indicators. So this one is, I think, has pretty good depth, but just by virtue of not having seen a ton of these guys in person with the way camps shook out, like last year, for instance, like Future 50, Under Armour's Future 50 was rising seniors. This year it was like rising juniors. So we didn't get to see anybody like that would have been offensive lineman at that camp. So like our exposure to these offensive tackles is probably not as great as it would have been in past years. So like that's why we don't have a 5-star offensive lineman right now, because I just didn't want to. I would prefer to watch them play at least a couple games before we tab them as 5 stars, instead of kind of maybe making an educated guess in July and having to maybe pull a 5-star off just because we were wrong on a guess. So I want to see a little more with those offensive linemen, but Garby Lambert, based off kind of where we have him ranked, like he would be kind of in that striking distance if he's a guy who really catches our eye, whether it's like on senior film or in person.
All right, we got one more thing and we're gonna let you go. There's a super chat. If you can address this real quick, Charles. A comparison between Aaron Noland and CJ Carr. I guess we have an Ohio State fan who says Pucks. But any thoughts on this, Charles?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Noland's the most productive high school quarterback in this cycle, and it probably is not close relative to the top quarterbacks. He's threw like 4,095 yards last year, 55 touchdowns, 4 picks. I think he had like 73% completion, like 13 yards per attempt. Like his stats are off the charts, and that's in, I think, if not the highest class in Georgia. I can't remember, Mike, what class Langston Houston. If like maybe second to highest. It was like pretty good competition. He just like eviscerated everybody he played, to the point where like I think he was a guy who college staffs maybe weren't as high on initially, and his junior year was so dominant. His recruiting kind of almost like looped back around, and he became a top target. A guy like Ohio State would land. I mean, Ohio State recruits quarterbacks at a really high level, So I think with him, he as a high school player is the most like established of all of these top quarterbacks. And that's one thing when you look at this 2024 quarterback group, and you just like, I mean, like I have a spreadsheet where I have everything written out of these guys. It's like every stat category, and they're all in like order. Just comparatively to most years, this group is like not that productive. Like I'm not sure we have a quarterback in the top 100, 150 who threw for more than 30 touchdowns other than Aaron Noland. Like it wasn't like, it's not a group that is like putting up gaudy production. So that's how he differentiates himself, is he's just so productive. Like I don't think the arm talent, physical tools are necessarily overwhelming. I'm not sure if you've seen him in person, Mike, but he's good, but it's not a deal like where you see him is going to blow you away, but he is such a good high school player. That's how he's differentiated himself, and also like very accurate and I think very smart and knows where to go with the ball.
Yeah, I think I saw him as a freshman. I was like, oh, it was the lefty and he wore number 7. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
going for the Michael Vick thing.
Exactly. All right. Well, Charles, we held you a lot longer than I anticipated. I blame you for long answers, and Tim for asking a bunch of questions. And I
like talking about it, man.
And that's what, this is the thing. Like Charles Powers gets so much crap, but I mean, when you listen to the guy talk, I mean, you learn. I like hearing from people.
And here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. Like I'm trying to learn while we're doing this, and if we make mistakes, like it's something like we go back and study, and it's a process. And there's guys we screw up on every year, and I'm just like trying to make sure we get it right. But I think the thing that I just want to hammer home is like our process. And if you look at our rankings, like if you look at our rankings on Notre Dame, guys, there's Notre Dame prospects that we're way higher on than everybody else. It might not be the quarterback who everybody talks about. It might be an offensive lineman, or it might be a running back, like in this year. But I think the biggest thing to hammer home is like we're trying to do it fairly, and we'll try to be as honest as possible, and not dig our heels in, to the degree that maybe people think we do.
Well, there you go. So CJ Carr is not locked into his current ranking.
He's not locked in.
Okay. All right. Charles Power, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Enjoy the week, and I'm sure we'll have you on at some point, and we'll probably talk about the same exact thing in a few months. We'll definitely check in with you to get your thoughts on some of that early senior season footage.
Yeah,
from CJ Carr.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Charles. See you. Tim, I mean, is a sharp guy. I mean, that like I said there, I like hearing from people who make me smarter, and I feel like I'm smarter from talking to him. So again, like we said earlier in the show, I don't like the CJ Carr ranking. But I'm not gonna lie to you, Tim. That quarterback from Massachusetts who you asked him about, I'd never heard his name before.
That's what it's
never heard his name before. So I just feel like some people on like I'll scroll my notifications during the show. Because I tweeted out like, hey, we have Charles Power on, and like people are like, I mean, he's an idiot. Like, like those people, I'm just like, you like, what do you know? Like, how like you need, like, it's hard for me to take you seriously if like your Twitter existence is just bashing people. Like you could disagree with them, but like, damn, like that guy knows what he's talking about. He said like he's wrong on guys all the time. Like, I think he is on CJ, but I mean, like I think we can have a level of respect while also disagreeing with people.
No, I agree, and he talks a lot about new guys popping on, which is the kid from Marblehead. It's like I've known about that kid for 3 years. I've been seeing him play and whatnot. And he's outstanding. So now he's got on the national scene. He got ranked, and now people, oh my God, who's this guy out of Massachusetts? I don't know. I look at these quarterbacks, Mike, and I've said this, and people may not like it or whatnot, but who are you turning away in the top 10? If any of these guys wanted to come to Notre Dame, who are you saying, no, you can't play at Notre Dame? Yeah. All these guys can play at Notre Dame. They're all damn good football players. They're all really good quarterbacks. Notre Dame is getting a good one in CJ Carr. Easy as that. And it's like, I know it's one ranking. People lose their mind. I get it. But Notre Dame, he is the headliner of this class. So, and when you listen, and what I like about Power or anyone at any service, whatever it is, if you have a philosophy, if you have a formula, and you have a process on how you do it with his team, he's not in there, by himself eating Cheetos, throwing darts at the board. He has a process, and it sounds like he studies it a lot. He's constantly reading. I mean, he threw out data that now that I love doing research on recruiting. I think it's fascinating, and that's what he's doing. So. Yeah. I'm a big Trinity League guy, and he just threw out facts like, yeah, it's great football. None of these guys go to the NFL. So that's kind of how he's evaluating Kingston. Great football player. The first word out of his mouth is safe, and it's very correct. Very correct.
I wanted to ask him why – I've asked him that before, but like why – I want to get on the air, like why they do the NFL draft as like their – so we'll have to say that for a different time because it's like why does that matter, like what they are – where they're picking the NFL, but where you're picking the NFL is kind of like how you do in college, and that's what they're basing this off of. Like how do you project in college, and how you do in college is how you do in the NFL. So it's a lot of projecting the projectability. It's projecting the projectability, right? That's words, Mike. Come on. No. Projecting the talent for the next level, not how good they necessarily are as high school players.
No, I know. And I agree. And that's, and I know that's, like when I look at recruits, so, I mean, Kingston's a perfect example. You watch him, I'm like, that dude's a dude. He is a stud when you watch him. And then with Charles, he's like, okay, well, he fits into this category. How many Mike backers at his size are getting drafted? And that's his formula. And that's the way they do things. Okay. I mean, it's simple as that, right? I mean, they make Coca-Cola, you got Pepsi, everyone has different formulas. And at the end of the day, you either like it or you don't, or you got to respect it. But it's the Mike Singer term. I got to get that on a poster in here.
Data point.
It's a data point, baby.
That's right, baby.
It's a data point. And Notre Dame's getting a lot of good football players. We just got to constantly remind ourselves of that.
It's a great point about, like, at least the guy has a process and he's not throwing stuff at a dartboard. So, for the 200 folks who are still with us an hour and a half in,
thank you.
For a weekday shows is probably the latest we've ever gone. So, I appreciate you guys for like listening and not just being a Twitter guy who just wants to, has maybe seen 2 seconds of CJ Carr, just knows he was ranked maybe as a 5-star at one point, and then sees him not ranked a 5-star and just yells obscenities, and this is how dare they, like there's a lot more context to this stuff. So it was interesting. Well, Tim, I will let you go. I got I got to be up pretty early to get on the road. And I'm sure you got an early morning too. So we will. Kevin says you look wiped.
Long day when the wife's out for work and a work trip, and I got the kids. And like I said, at gymnastics tonight. Yeah, I'm ready to go downstairs. I haven't had dinner yet, so I am.
All right, JJ Carr must be reading my text. He says, "Imagine another surprise that Goolsby pops in." All right, I got Goolsby back. No, I'm just kidding. No Goolsby tonight.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Goolsby gave that little blurb last night where some guy wanted him to do a questionnaire. He didn't do it, and a guy dropped him in the rankings. So there goes the point about some guys don't like someone, they drop them. So I found that interesting from Mike last night.
Yeah, I don't know if Charles is sending out questionnaires, but
yeah, he's not.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's Notre Dame Football Show. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that like button on YouTube if you haven't yet. Leave us a kind of review if you like the show on your podcast platform. And please head to blueandgold.com to check out so much Notre Dame football and recruiting coverage. Appreciate you all, and as always, we will catch you next time.